Hello, Biblionauts. The previous video got off in a rather convenient moment. We were about to read the last page of the introduction of the Dialectic of the Enlightenment, and I'm just taking it from there. Right now it's just a summary that's left in the last page. And first they're going to talk about the first study, which has to do is concerning man and nature. They say that the first study is an attempt to focus, understanding more clearly the nexus of rationality and actuality, and upon what it is inseparable therefrom, that of the nature of mastery, that of nature and the mastery of nature. The accompanying critique of enlightenment is intended to prepare the way for a positive notion of enlightenment, which will release it from entanglement in blind domination. So there is a dichotomy between man and nature, and man wanting to dominate nature, which is what they're going to want to release it from. And then they go into talking in more detail about the first study and its two main theses, one being myth is already enlightenment, and the other one, enlightenment reverts to mythology. And then a bit further down, they talk about the first traces of the dialectic of myth and enlightenment, which they will be looking at in the Odyssey to explore bourgeois civilization, as this is supposed to be one of the first testimonies of bourgeois civilization. Then at the midpoint, and now I'm going to read directly, are the notions of sacrifice and renunciation, in which appear the difference as well as the unity of mythic nature and enlightenment mastery of nature. The second excursus is concerned with Kant, Sade, and Nietzsche, who mercilessly elicited the implications of the Enlightenment. And this is also the reason why I'm probably very soon going to be doing a read-along, a more superficial read-along of the Generality of Morals from Nietzsche. Now, they continue to say, here we show, in referring to this part of the analysis, here we show that how submission of everything natural to the autocratic subject finally culminates in the mastery of the blindly objective and natural. So that's what I was talking about before, sort of like the human drive to domination of nature in order to dominate through nature other entities manifested in technology. And then this tendency evens out all the testimonies of bourgeois thought, even that of moral rigor and absolute morality. Now, for the next essay is the culture industry, and they have a really nice summary just after talking about the culture industry in general. It says, in the same page, demonstrates the regression of enlightenment to ideology, which finds its typical expression in cinema and radio, so they're going to be exploring those two. And here enlightenment consists above all in the calculation of effectiveness and of the techniques of production and distribution in accordance with its content ideology. In accordance with its content, ideology expends itself in the idolization of giving existence and of power which controls technology. So that's just very clear. Power is the control of technology. We're gonna also see a lot of the inherent accumulation of the culture industry and the commodification of everything, including thought, as we talked about at the beginning. We're gonna be talking about very soon again. And then talking about their analysis, they say that it gives to the products objectively inherent. The objectively inherent claim to be aesthetic images which accordingly embody truth and demonstrate the nullity of social being in the nihilistic of that claim. The section of the culture industry is even more fragmentary than the others, so that's to say that it's going to be a bit harder to read for me, because I especially when I read in English, it's much easier for me to read on a linear sense. Now going to the third part, and here is the argument and thesis of the elements of anti-Semitism, is concerned with the actual reversion of enlightened civilization to barbarism, which is not the main thesis, but the main observation of this book. It's the observation in which this book is based. So it's quite interesting that they're putting it pretty much at the end. Not merely the idea, but the practical tendency to self-destruction has always been characteristic of rationalism, and not only in the states in which it appears and disguised. In this sense, we offer the main lines of a philosophical prehistory of anti-Semitism. Its rationalism is deduced from the nature of the dominant ratio itself, and the world which corresponds to its image. This chapter is directly related to the empirical research carried out in... Okay, yeah, that's pretty much it. The last part of the book will contain sketches and drafts which belong to the area of thought foregoing anthropology, dialectical thought, and so on. So that's it. What we were talking about here, this page contains pretty much the whole book. So if that sounds interesting, then you will enjoy the book. These 3 essays have a compound effect that adds to an overarching theme. But if you are interested in the culture industry and sort of like more the capitalistic economic aspect of the implications of the Enlightenment and commodified thought and those kind of things, you can join only for that. I will make a video titled Culture Industry when it comes to that. If you are more interested in the concept of the Enlightenment as a whole, you can follow for the first chapters. If you just want to know more generally about like anti-Semitism and how it relates, if it relates at all, to the concept of the Enlightenment, to the pursuit of knowledge as power, which is very important that they make this connection between knowledge and power. They're going to use Bacon and others to defend that. Then you might want to join for the last chapter, and then I think we have just a few miscellaneous at the end, with some poetry and some random thoughts, aphorisms, which is not so much pertaining to the thesis of this book, but encouraging the writing of other books based on the premises that are going to be defended here. So that was the introduction. I am now reading the first chapter, which is the concept of enlightenment, and I hope at least I managed to drag some of you to the reading of this, or to the attempt of reading this. I think this is a very worth to read book. You know, there are like reading philosophy might not be the most rewarding in an aesthetic sense. It's not reading a novel. It's harder to read, especially if you're not used to reading it. But if to that you add the fact that most people that read philosophy read ancient philosophy, there is not much to learn in there, because we already work upon the assumptions that were made in classical philosophy. But these kind of texts that have ideas that are still very recent in the philosophical landscape can feel much more impactful and give us much more insight into our condition. That's my opinion, which is not to say that you don't have a lot to extract from ancient philosophy or medieval philosophy, but they definitely feel more foreign. So in a sense, although the writing of Adorno and the complexity of their argument is backed by the assumption that you have some, not assumption, but the kind of understanding that you already are into philosophy and have been reading the basics, which is, you know, everything that came before. The fact that it's temporarily in a greater proximity to you is probably going to make it much easier and much more relatable. So because of that, I think that this is a place that is as good as any other to start with philosophy. I don't think that philosophy needs to be read chronologically. I did that. I read a couple of massive histories of philosophy and all of Plato's dialogues as my introduction to philosophy, but I genuinely don't think that needs to be done. I know people that they started reading a super niche subject, and that every book in philosophy will lead you to another one, more than in any other discipline of writing, more than literature, more than everything else. Philosophy speaks to each other explicitly, and every book is kind of breaking up another book that has been written before or leading up to the next book. And because of that, you start here, and this will lead you. This page was already talking about sort of like the genealogy of morals, for example. So there you could go to Nietzsche, and then you would read Nietzsche, and you would see him probably talk about his misunderstood notions on Greek philosophy, and you could go back to in time to Greek philosophy, and then who knows where you would end up. So there is no right way to approach philosophy, and that is why I'm not concerned in presenting it in a chronological sense. I also think that there is plenty of resources to get the basics of philosophy chronologically already. This is a book that's interesting me now, and just wanted to share it with you. I hope to see you on the other side for the next read along of the Dialectic of the Enlightenment. Thank you, BookTube.